So, I wanted to talk about the environmental influence post. The first one explains an impact of a person's or family's environmental impact. The example I could come up with that would work pretty well is, your mental and physical abuse of a child. Um, when their family environment is in poverty, they don't get the things they want. And the parents aren't, caring. They're very abusive mentally and sometimes even physically. This type of behavior would end up altering their livelihood a lot. We learn in psychology that things we do when they're young, when they're two, when they're three, when they're four, become a very big deal. I mean, as simple as diet. We feed kids Pringles all the time. They're going to love Pringles when they're 15. They're going to love Pringles when they're 20. And so I think that honestly connects a little bit with absolutely connects to this kind of abuse or this kind of behavior that someone's environment could take. So if we use a kid in a mental and physical abusive parents onto this kid, and then in turn we end up seeing how they come out, they're going to have major mental health issues, whether it's something as simple, not really simple, but something like depression, something like anxiety. They'll feel worthlessness. If they're kids love their parents no matter what they do, yet they can still feel like their parents don't love them back. And so they get this, is it worth living? Is it worth am I worth it? Am I, these kind of depressive thoughts would eventually come into play. And so physically they could be harmed, bones broken if they're physically abused. Mentally, the least likely or the most likely would be depression and anxiety, and that would be kind of the least of their problems, where it could be things like schizophrenia or altered mind, damaging their mind so badly that they become antisocial, repressed memories. We did learn in psychology that your brain doesn't repress them, but you can. So alcohol and things like that can repress your memories if you drink enough and things like that. Emotionally, they wouldn't even know how to handle their emotions. They might even get yelled at for their emotions. So if they get abused enough, then they know not to show emotion. They get taught by this family. And so when they grow up trying to date or trying to have just a friendship or trying to be social, they're going to have a irrational fear of what is this person going to think if I show this emotion? What is this? Because they're going to what they're doing is taking their experience they had and putting on other people. Now, of course, is that that's kind of unfair for the stranger, sure, but you can't necessarily blame them because that's all they know. And so they end up putting that on the other person. And so they're putting all this fear, all this experience they had on this new experience and expecting that to happen. And so you're building these parents or these families environments are building a horrible future for kids when they have these horrible negative impacts. And then one of them talks about even intellectually, physical and mental abuse can force depression, and that depression doesn't force work. I have a personal thing with depression myself, and when I was in high school, I looked at my work and thought, "What's the point?" And so I didn't work. And so if you end up getting this mental illness, it affects intellectually as well, whether it is a learning disability or not. That mental illness affects it greatly to the point where you just don't work, and then you don't learn the education you should, you don't take the time you should, and then you kind of come out of it, whether you pass or not, as like, I didn't learn anything. And so it definitely is a huge deal. A general example from my own background, um, both personally and professionally, what's interesting is I like to talk about this with other people, is my parents, both my dad's side was Catholic, my mom's side was Jehovah Witness. And so I was a push and pull. When I was growing up, I went to Seton, and we thought, okay, we're going to be Catholic. But as we aged and my parents got divorced, it pulled the other way to Jehovah Witness. My mom was really strong about it. My grandma was extremely. You talk to her, it's all about religion. It's all about Jehovah Witness, and they're right, and everyone else is wrong. And so they pushed so hard, though, that I ended up losing interest in religion altogether. on a personal level, um, they push so hard. They showed the rules on what they did and how they did it, and that push was so forceful that it pushed me right out of it instead of pushing me in. And so now with Jehovah's Witness, I don't necessarily have a good standing with who they are and how they act because of what I've seen and heard and experienced. But then Catholic, my dad kind of faded away because I didn't live with him, and so it wasn't really forced on me. And so that kind of faded too. So then now the Jehovah's Witness gave me a negative presentation of religion, and I try my hardest to make sure I don't put that negative connotation on other religions. You know, 'cause sometimes it reflects like, oh, religion, right? This person's really religious, but I normally am aware of it, and so something like that, um, on a personal level and professionally, allowed me to kind of grow out of the religion, but also on a professional level, know to understand why people do it. I understand why people have religion. They use it for faith, for hope, for confidence, and that is kind of amazing to me. Even though I'm not a real religious person, almost atheist in a way, I can kind of get behind why people want to do that, and why people really use religion as like a boulder that they can keep there that keeps them stable, and that kind of stability from something they truly believe in is pretty impressive. And so, both personally, I'm not into it, but professionally, I definitely understand it. I definitely support anyone who would be behind it, and I of course don't judge people, and unless they disrespect me or something like that. I give people respect until they disrespect me, and so something like that had changed me for the future. When most people would expect me actually to be pushed so hard that I'd be pushed right into Jehovah's Witness and religion, and I'd come out religious. But I feel like sometimes we talk about in psychology a little bit that um, if you push too hard, it pushes them right out. So.